The rain is supposed to hold off, so let's cross our fingers. But as I've told a few of you, we are a true municipality. And so anything Huntsville, an Athens, a Decatur, Nashville, well, not Nashville, they're in Tennessee, so I don't know what they have to do. Birmingham. So anything that the state of Alabama tells any other municipality that they have to do, we have to do as well, except maybe just on a smaller scale. The first white settlers were recorded in this area about 1805. Before that was the Native Americans, of course, and this, from what we understand, would have been Chickasaws. It's right on the outside of what Chickasaws deem as their homelands, and several people have told us that was who was here. Really fun story about how the Chickasaw Native Americans ended up in this, when I say area, like from Tupelo and on into Alabama. They were they traveled as a larger group from the west down through Mississippi, and they had a sacred pole that they would travel during the day. They'd put the sacred pole in the ground, they would go to sleep, they would wake up whichever way that sacred pole was leaning. That was the Great Spirit was telling them to continue moving that way. They got to the Mississippi River, had never seen anything like the Mississippi River, so that was new to them. And but one morning they got up, and there was two brothers that was leading this large group. And one brother said, no, the pole is standing up. The other brother said, no, it's still leaning. So they decided whoever's following this brother, stay with him. Whoever wants to continue on, come with me. And that's how we ended up with the Choctaws and the Chickasaws. I'm not going to try to pronounce the brother's name, but one brother's name sounded like Choctaw, the other brother's name sounded like Chickasaw. And so they parted ways at that point. And but when you look at a map, you'll see they're very close together there. So in 1805, first white settlers started settling in this area, and then in 1818, about 65 adult white males signed a petition of incorporation for the town of Mooreville. They sent that petition to the Alabama territorial legislation. We had just broken off from the Mississippi territory and had become our own territory. And so we were the first town incorporated by that territorial legislation. So we are older than the state. We are not the oldest city in our state because Huntsville and Mooreville had already been incorporated as part of that larger Mississippi territory. So a little bit of semantics, you'll hear that sometimes people say, oh, they're the oldest town in the state of Alabama. Not quite, but we are older than the state of Alabama. So that was we were incorporated a month later by that territorial legislation. We petitioned in October. We were incorporated in November of 1818. The state became a state in 1819. In 1819 as well, the town of Mooreville was named as a postal stop on a postal road. It started in Huntsville, came down up to Mooreville and continued on. So the town needed a place for that horse and rider to stop and deliver the mail. And the stagecoach inn and tavern became that place. And so those original post office boxes that you saw in the post office, those were actually built originally in the 1820s for this building. And then they stayed here until they moved to the post office, the one that we use today. But in the this building was built about 1821, but the original siding that's up under the porch, that is original early 1800s siding. Of course, everything else, because it's been exposed to weather, has been replaced from time to time. When we go inside, the floors are original. There's a lot of original horsehair plaster on the walls. But there's also a loose piece of horsehair plaster if you've never seen. Amazing how that one piece can lay there, from 1820 and still actually be together. The things that they knew how to build, which we sort of built that way today. The original building was just these 2 front rooms and the 2 bedrooms. There is a room in the back that was, added later. But a traveler could come to Mooreville and stay here, have a hot meal by the fireplace, and go up the stairs and sleep. And if a traveler got here early enough and could get the room above this main room, the same fireplace is above there, so they could even have a warm night, all for the total of 25 cents a quarter. And so it's the architecture of the mantel, multiple fireplaces. This was probably a pretty posh place to stop kind of in rural Alabama in the 1820s to stay, get a hot meal and a hot place to sleep. However, the bedrooms were communal, and so if you got here early, went on to sleep, you might wake up in the middle of the night or wake up early in the morning to get on your way, and there may be someone sleeping like over in the corner, on a pallet. Again, full belly and warm night, you're probably okay if they didn't bother you. The town owns this building. You'll hear about how we acquired the 3 buildings that we own as we travel to them. But this building, the town acquired in 1989. It was actually sitting on the ground. The staircase was long gone. The chimney was, falling down, and it was in quite disrepair. And it was privately owned up until that point, and it was by a multi-generational family that lived here, was understanding its significance, and said, this building does need to be restored. Hey, town, would you like it? And would you like the honor of restoring it? And the town at that point in time said absolutely. And so they started repairing this building around 1991. More of a fundraising effort. And then the movie, and we'll talk about this as we go too, Disney's Tom and Huck came around 1995 and rented pretty much the whole town to film that entire movie. They used the Stagecoach and Tavern for Doc Robinson's office and a mortuary and taxidermy. And so the town had started doing some things to the building already. So they said, well, okay, we want to do a few more things, Disney, before you take over. So right before the movie, we replaced the porch and put the stairs back, and then we handed it over to Disney, and then they kind of took over the inside because they liked the inside being all falling apart. So they really didn't do anything to the inside for the movie except just bring in all their props and different things. So if you see that movie, when Injun Joe comes down the stormy road at night at the very, very beginning, opening scene, he walks this entire street in the dark and lightning and all, it rains, and he enters the tavern, which was Doc Robinson's office, and it's red inside, and there's skeletons and coffins, and then stuffed animals, because it was also used as the taxidermy. So pretty cool. That's kind of what the inside of the tavern really looked like if you look at the walls past all of the props and things. And then we, then after, Disney leaves town, we used a lot of the proceeds from that movie then to finish up this building in the mid-90s. A little bit before we go in, and then this is going to be kind of the end of the tavern before we move back to the post office, a little bit about the town that I didn't mention earlier. So, we are a municipality. We are run by a mayor and a town council. The tavern actually serves as our city hall. So once a month we have our city council meetings here by the fireplace if we need to. And it's usually just us, the 6 of us. And if anybody shows up, we kind of laugh and joke that, okay, what have we done? Who's been mad? but we are such a small town. Usually we've heard about it before, but for the most part we all get along. But people do want to share their thoughts, but usually we share them just to each other as we get together and do things, and we don't have to have those big long discussions like other city councilmen have to do. Our annual budget for the entire year is around $40,000. And so that $40,000 keeps our main ticket items are keeping our street lights on. I heard some people talking about bug bites, so it's mosquito spraying, and which is very, very important because of how close we are to the backwaters of the Tennessee River. That's not moving; it's stagnant water, and municipal insurance. And then a little bit of that $40,000 goes to our historic preservation. But the majority of our historic preservation that you'll see today is done from events, tours like, well, not today because it's free, but we do other tours throughout the year, and we do grants. We're able to apply for grants and things, and so we're all volunteers out here. We have about 50 people, 20 homes, and 4 brick and mortar businesses. Let's see if they'll be nice and turn around. So everybody is used. We laugh when people move to town, when we get the opportunity for someone to move to town. We're immediately asking them, okay, like, what do you do for a living? Like, what's your talents? Can you bake? Can you do? My talent is spreadsheets, and so I'm so thankful for the other ladies that can bake great and garden and all those good things. So it's just a really fun place to live and grow up. And does anybody have any questions? And of course, when we go in, you can ask. And as we walk, just interrupt me and ask whatever questions. Okay. Ownership of it to, again, 1989, and it had been like a private residence, sharecroppers. It had been a business, like an antique store at one time, and
so outhouse somewhere.
Yeah.
Rough living.
Yeah. Well, since everybody is kind of standing here, I'll mention the map. So we're a quarter square mile. I tell people that we are a tic-tac-toe board with an extra street north and south and east and west. However, you will see 3 extra streets there. Those were never laid out by those original, however many people that were here in the 1820s. And we do not have those streets today. So the 6 streets that you see today as you walk through or drive through is what they laid out in the 1820s, and we've never added to it or taken away from it. With Water Street, that on the map is on the far left, it would be covered up now with the backwaters of the Tennessee River. So the Tennessee River would not have been as close as it was, as it is today, back in the 1820s. And we have no reason why that they didn't add on to these other streets, but it never was. But however, the entire town is on the National Register of Historic Places, and not individual buildings, but the entire quarter square mile of Mooreville. That is good, because then the the federal government or the Alabama Historic Commission, all these people that have hands in that bucket, can't actually tell us what we can do to our individual buildings per se, of you have to build this way or things like that. But we can get federal money and state monies because the entire town is on the National Register. So that helps us as a council in a town drastically when we're trying to figure out how to restore these buildings. And then the reason that the entire town is on the register, when it was being considered, was those true historians said that you cannot how intact the entire village was from the layout and most of the architecture that was still here. And they said you can't, it's very, very hard to go and find a full intact village like it was laid out in the 1800s. So, okay. One quick story about, I'm gonna give you 2 extra things today about 2 of our homes as we walk.
Excuse me.
It was given to us during the country's bicentennial, and it was just framed, and so that is a plug for our 250 that's coming up just July. So if all of y'all are here and interested in history, you probably have heard about that, and you probably have plans and things. So every town is having special July 4th. So when you go back to your communities, figure out what's going on for the country's 250, and if you don't like what they're doing, look at your neighboring cities and then figure out, because this is a very special time, young ones, to be living to celebrate our country's 250. But real quick, just a bonus story. This little house was built in the late 1890s by Uncle Zach and Aunt Mandy. They were an African American couple living there, and he was a carpenter in the area, and he was famous. People would hire him for those ornate columns and scroll work in the late 1800s. That was pretty cool. But Aunt Mandy would do odd jobs. She would work for some of the other ladies in town inside their homes doing things, cooking and cleaning probably. But they paid her in like trinkets and treasures, silver and crystal and different things. And she acquired such a collection that she started having once a year a lawn party out here in her lawn. And it was one of the most sought after invitations for the town, and also some of the surrounding farmers and families would come in and attend Uncle Zach and Aunt Mandy's annual party. Okay, head back up to the post office. Post office located, but where was the postmaster? And so the postmaster changed in the 1840s, and he was running the General Mercantile. So those post office boxes that you saw moved from a tavern to here. And this is the oldest continually operating post office in the state of Alabama. And we're only open the 2 hours, Monday through Saturday. We're totally fine with that, because when you move to Mooreville and you love Mooreville, we do the things to keep Mooreville the way it is. And so if we leave, a lot of us leave before 8 a.m. during the week, and so we just know we get our mail on Saturday. And we're totally okay with that. And the post office has, over the years, has served, again, kind of as our greeting and finding out what's going on with people, especially Saturday mornings. This is a very busy little coming through. You're going to see someone, or even the postmaster or postmistress. We have had long-standing postmasters and postmistresses, and so they get to know us. They know our children. We don't even have to tell them what our box numbers are. They just hand out the mail. They know our pets. The dogs come to the post office, and so if you're missing someone, normally you can ask them, hey, is so-and-so, out of town, or if someone's having like an extended sickness or something going on in their lives, you can kind of find out what the update is here at the post office. But we acquired this building in 1984. So 5 years before the tavern. And what happened was we had a long-standing postmistress. Her last name was Miss Pepper, and she had worked here for 30 plus years, and she was retiring. And so the post office took the opportunity to say, okay, we're just going to go ahead and close this one down. And they sent a letter out to everybody, in 30 days, we're going to close this post office. And so, of course, the town said, no, like, what do we do? You can't do that. We'll find another postmaster or postmistress. And they said, no, it's not about her retiring. Your building has all of these environmental deficiencies. And they were absolutely true. And the town agreed with everything. Up until that time, this is 1989 now, there was no running water, no bathroom. The roof was in bad shape. There might have been a couple resident little mice living in the building. Several things that needed to happen to the building. And the reason it had kind of gotten into that point was it was privately owned, and those postmistresses and postmasters had all lived in town, and so they would just put a note on the door, ran home for lunch, they would eat their lunch, use the restroom, come back, anything they needed to do, they would just go across the street or whatever. And that had rocked along until 1984. And so the town said, okay, we will fix all of those things. And then they were about to write the check, and they're like, whoa, we can't write a check for a building we don't own. So that private residence that owned the building said, hey, I will sell the building to you for $10. We got to make this right. And so the town used what they called their funds that they had saved for a rainy day, and it was about $5,600, I think, to fix all of those things, those 13 environmental deficiencies that the Postal Service wanted us to fix. And so this is really the town's first restoration project, if you want to call it that. And so they told the Postal Service, okay, come look at it. We've done everything. They came down. They said, yeah, but you still, it's just in the best interest to shut this post office down. The town said, no, that's still not going to happen. So the town contacted Senator Heflin, if you know your United States government history, and in D.C. and said, hey, they're about to shut the oldest continually operating post office down in your state. And so he sent a message for a meeting. Well, then they sent back and said, sure, we'll meet with you months down the road, like how D.C. works. And he sent back a message and said, no, if you're going to shut down my oldest continuing post office in my state tomorrow or whenever they were going to do it, you will meet with me this afternoon. Well, the mayor received a phone call the very next day saying your post office is staying open. And so sweet, we have a picture, a black and white picture of Senator Heflin at his desk eating a chocolate cake that he signed it, thanks for the cake, enjoyed working with you. So the ladies in town found out that he loved a specific chocolate cake in the DC area, from the bakery in DC, and they called up that bakery and had that cake delivered as a thank you. So the town has always been very hospitable, and even though that cake was from DC, we have phenomenal bakers here. And so just a little plug, the little Aunt Zach and Aunt Mandy's building is owned by a sweet, sweet lady named Lila, and she is your southern baker. She does homemade ice cream, milkshakes, divinity fudge, cheese straws, all that fun southern stuff. She's normally open in the warmer months on like Thursday, Friday, Saturdays. It's a treat to just get to meet her, much less if you get to try something. And then we also have the bakery over here on this corner, Dogwood and Magnolia, that is also open those same times. However, she has young kids, and so always check social media. Miss Lila, she don't really have social media. So that's just one of those. If you happen to be in and Lila's is open, go in if you just want to meet her. So, so this is the first building we acquired. And so that was 1984. The same gentleman actually owned the tavern And so kind of after all of this settled down, it was probably in his mind that like, hey, I probably need to go ahead and give the town the tavern as well and let them, so that's kind of what pushed the tavern. So then 5 years later, we get the tavern. So okay, any questions as we walk?
What's that pole there you got next to the sidewalk?
I don't know. I thought you were going to ask me about the little fire pits. That was here when I got here in 2005. At some point, it was probably a hitching post. A lot of our residents will tie up their dogs while they go inside the post office right there. But yeah, at some point in our history, somebody put it there as a hitching post. Don't know the full story. I just wanted to mention this building again because we're right here. This house was actually built by the first self-taught female architect in the state of Alabama. It started being built in the 1930s, finished in the 1940s, but as a young little girl, she knew and her family knew that she was always interested in buildings and things. And when she was college age, she applied to Auburn, Yale, and a third university. And they all declined her because she was female. So she researched and purchased all the books and all the materials that they were teaching at that time to architects. And she just self-taught herself. And then found out that Auburn was administrating the registration test. And so she registered herself, took the test, passed with flying colors, and became a registered architect in the state of Alabama. She and her sister grew up in the Cortland area and owned farmland. And her sister married into one of the multi-generational families and lived with her husband in the White House just across the street. And so after she lived in that multi-generational house for years, she decided she wanted her own house, a new house. And so her sister, Elizabeth Coulter Smith, designed this house for her. And so that's how Elizabeth ended up designing a house in Mooreville. But Elizabeth Coulter Smith, did lots of things in the state of Alabama. If you're familiar with Delano Park in Decatur, she designed a lot of that hardscape. She worked on a restoration effort in park design around the old State Bank in Decatur. Mountain Brook, she ended up, I think, living and settling for a large majority of her life in the Mountain Brook area. And there's even a statue in one of their town centers or squares for her and honoring all of the work that she did in Mountain Brook. And then one of the fun things about her is she, in her career, she ended up purchasing a mill factory. So not only was she drawing these pretty buildings, she was managing the business and the workers of the mill factory and building her own cabinets and wood and crown molding and all the things to go inside the building. So she was a very, very progressive lady for the early 1900s. We'll look up and look at the hand. It's always been a hand. It's never been a cross. But we'll talk about that once we get inside. And pardon our landscaping. There's never a good time to do historic preservation efforts, and you just have to do it and pardon the construction. One of the things historians, the bricks on the building are actually, they say, are unusually symmetric for hand-formed bricks. Always been the stucco on that's original, 1830s. we are in the 1830s brick church. So just to recap, 1820s tavern, 30s brick church, 40s post office, and then on the other side of town, way over there, 2 streets over, is the 1850s Church of Christ. So all you gotta remember is a couple decades or 4 decades, and you can do this tour. So feel free to let me know, and I'll give you a few more things, and I'll get you on the schedule. But this piece of land was donated for a community Christian church to be built. It was donated by the 2nd governor of the state of Alabama, Thomas Bibb. One thing I didn't mention earlier is if you drew a line from Mooreville Road all the way through town, 2 gentlemen actually purchased the town of Mooreville after Alabama became a state. Then Alabama decided it was legally going to start selling the land off in large sections back to the people. So really and truly, it was like unlawful to be owning land and conducting real estate until the state started selling it officially. But again, settlers were here since 1805, and so very, very interesting research project to start back at those early records and track deeds as they were going from maybe who were those original 1805 people to those original people that signed that petition, and could we find deeds from those people, and they had already maybe given over those homesteads to their children or maybe their grandchildren, and now all of a sudden 2 gentlemen has bought up all of Mooreville with, of course, a lot more land around. Those 2 gentlemen were James Clemens, the James Clemens we know about in Madison, and then Thomas Bibb, which would become the 2nd governor of Alabama after his brother passes away while in office. But if you draw that line, Thomas Bibb bought this side of Mooreville and James Clemens bought that side. And then they started reselling or redeeding the land back to those individuals that were already living here, running businesses here, had homes here, had barns here. You know, amazing how all of that worked. We could talk about that forever, but anyway, so Thomas Bibb, of course, owned, you know, kind of this side of the town, so he deeded this property for a just Christian church. During that time, you didn't have a preacher stationed somewhere. It would just be whoever was traveling through. And so you would have Baptist preachers preach, you would have Cumberland Presbyterian preachers preach, you would have a Methodist preacher preach. But over time, in the 40s or so, a Cumberland Presbyterian preacher, you know, he said, this is going to be my church. It is going to become a Cumberland Presbyterian church, and that's what happened. Now, when that happened, there was a handful of families that broke off and said, you know, no, we just want to, you know, stay a Christian church, and they started worshiping in their homes until they could purchase property on the other side of town and built the Church of Christ. So that's how a village as small as this got 2 prominent structures, you know, as a church and worship for as long as they did. And that's a funny story, I'll tell that at the end. But this building stayed Cumberland Presbyterian until the 1890s, and they sold it to the Methodists. When that happened, the Cumberland Presbyterians took everything out of the church with them. So the pews you're sitting in and this altar rail would be from the 1890s, and it would have been what the Methodists brought in or built. The chandelier, however, is original. We had a wealthy widow here in town that lived in the back of town that got her hands on the original chandelier that was taken out, and she brought it back fairly quickly, so it was not out of here for long. And so that is original. Your floors are original, you know, all of your bricks and your columns and all that. There was a enslaved balcony in the back. That was taken down, you know, after the Civil War, and that the wood, the joists and different things were used to do some restoration efforts in the ceiling. So all of that is still in the building. Let's see, I lost my train of thought. So then the Methodists, they purchased it in 1890, and they worshipped here until about the mid-century, probably the 50s or 60s, and then the congregation just kind of whittled away, and it just sat here, just kind of deteriorating for, you know, up until you know, the early 90s. And there were a couple of efforts by the Cumberland Presbyterians, and oddly enough, around the bicentennial, with the Huntsville Museum of Art did for our country's bicentennial in '75, did at the very first walking tour that had ever been done here in Mooreville. And on that walking tour, a couple of Cumberland Presbyterians members saw this building and said, "Oh my goodness, you know, we have this fantastic old historic church falling down." So there was a little bit of a preservation effort done by them, but again, it just didn't get a lot of traction. Again, because there's just was not a congregation, and it's like, you want me to go pay money for just a building that's, you know, lots of reasons why those several different things never did take traction. And so in 1994, 6 years after getting the tavern, 3 years after getting the tavern, the town actually approached the Cumberland Presbyterians and said, you know, like, hey, you know, this building is falling apart, you know, can we purchase it? And through all of the research on trying to get the deeds and everything to clear from a real estate standpoint, that's when it was discovered that the Methodists had actually purchased the building, you know, 100 years earlier. And so then we went to the Methodists and they said, oh, you know, absolutely. And so again, for $10, this building was purchased. And so there you go. So in about a 10-year period, you know, the town went from owning nothing to now they own 3 early 1800s buildings that they were all 3 in great need for historic preservation efforts. And so that is kind of what started the whole, you know, Mooreville kind of being a showplace and tours and all the restoration efforts that you have going on here today. Again, we mentioned the movie Tom and Huck. So Disney played a big role in helping us with all that historic preservation. Again, they paid us actually $15,000 to rent the entire town. People say that's not a lot of money, but again, even our budget today is $40,000. So if somebody wanted to give me $15,000 to the town, you know, I might take it too and be really excited. But they also, by using the buildings, they did things. In this building, it was the courthouse scene where you see Injun Joe, or Tom Sawyer pointing out Injun Joe. He's the murderer, and he jumps up, runs across actors, and jumps out the window. So he jumped out that second window there. That one scene in the movie took 8 hours to film because it took 2 to 3 hours in between. It took 3 takes, and it took 2 to 3 hours in between each take to replace the window and get it back. So Disney took out the original window and replaced it with a sugar glass that, you know, would shatter safely. But if you watch the movie, he runs across either 3 or 4 extras that are sitting in the pews or sitting in the chairs in the courtroom, and those actors actually got paid, hazard pay, because he literally ran over the leg. So I couldn't even imagine today with all the liability and all the things like much they would get paid if they were paying actors, even in 1995, hazard pay. But they even gave the people cushions to put on their thighs so that they wouldn't get hurt. But Disney, because they had those really heavy rolling cameras, they would have just went through the floor. Because again, this building had just sat in decay for so long. So they shored up the floor, you know, up under these original floors. So that was really the first preservation efforts that happened on this building. And you know, all the things, we actually have a tour just about Tom Huck, so I could go on and on and on, but they had to take the shutters off this building. They painted the inside a really deep green. They had to bring in portable air conditioners, and then of course cut them off as soon as filming would start. So just, you know, real fun stuff, and you can just imagine throughout town. I'm trying to think if there's anything else about this building that we were talking as we were coming in. The bicentennial garden was put in 2018 when the town turned 200. Our information boards are in the process right now of getting reprinted because trial and error. What they were printed on did not stand up to our Alabama sun. But we do try and do a lot of native plants and pollinators, and as we've all been dodging the wasps and bumblebees and all that good stuff, we do try to, you know, as we're thinking about projects, you know, think about things that we want to continue to preserve and keep alive. So one of the funnest, one of the researching for the Tom Huck movie, from signing the contracts in April of '95 to filming and finishing filming in mid-June. So that was contracts, building sets, and filming the entire movie was from April to June. And then the town got a special showing of the movie over in Huntsville in December. So that was how quick they turned all of that around. But a letter, the production or the location manager, that you know, his job was to make sure that it could happen in this area. He met the mayor in December, before, you know, that April, December 1994, and then he was writing this letter in June of '95, and one of the statements, he's pretty much, it's his goodbye letter, thank you for, you know, letting us come, and his last statement, the last sentence, he says, you have your town back with a little bit of more money in your coffers. And of course, in my mind, I always have heard that statement, you know, money in your coffers. But I went back and I looked up that word coffers, and it said, like, originally it talked about, you know, something of structure, a trunk or something that would hold something of value. And I just thought about that, and I thought about Mooreville, that today, and really for 200 years, that something of value has been Mooreville, and the coffers has really been those 65 people that wrote that petition of incorporation, all the way up to the 50 people that live here today that has been protecting this treasure that we have in Mooreville. So with that, I thank you all, because you have played a part in helping us maintain this treasure that I feel like it is a treasure, and I hope you all do too. Thank you. And I hope you do come back to Mooreville. There's lots of more stories. I'll probably say I'm the most winded of our tour guides, and y'all got way more today on this free tour that I'm supposed to give out, but I just love the town and I love sharing it. But we have lots of themed tours, like we just did the Tom and Huck, and that's why a lot of the Tom and Huck is on my mind today. But in May and June, we have garden tours where you're going to be led by one of our master gardeners here in town, and you'll get to go behind the picket fences, and the residents will be out in their yards and talk to you about, you know, how their yards have evolved over the years and what plants you might be looking at. And I think we're going to do another Tom and Huck tour, the same one, but in September. I think in October we might have kind of like not a spooky tour, but you know, all these 1800s homes, we all have a little bit of something that may have happened there. So we'll tell some of our odd stories that we don't necessarily tell. I think we're going to have a Civil War story, and that is just a sneak peek about Civil War here in Mooreville. We did have one house that was taken down by the Union soldiers, but for the most part, it was very hospitable on both the Union soldiers and the residents of Mooreville coexisted. They worshiped together. Since we're sitting here in the church, they worshiped together here in the brick church as well as the Church of Christ. We have diary entries where Sophia People talks about the Union Chapel led services today. She didn't come to service one day because the Union soldiers had come and taken the stove and had taken it down to like their campsite. We've got letters from Union soldiers writing back about sitting next to a little pew and describing the children from their hairbow. This sweet little girl from her hairbow all the way down to her little sandals because she reminded him of his daughter so much, and he was writing back to his wife and how much he missed her and the children. And they worshipped in our home. I mean, not worship. A lot of the resident, or one resident in particular, would invite them to their homes to eat, and the soldiers would write home about being at such and such home, and this was the meal that we had. And so a very terrible time in our country where a town and the Union soldiers that were here just coexisted and tried to get through that ugly part of our country's history that we all understand. So that's going to be a really cool tour. So, and then we have our Christmas things, and you probably heard about this on social media, but if you didn't, Facebook and Instagram is where we do all of our advertising. Most of our tours, because it needs to be a small group, we don't start really early with putting the registrations out there because we're not trying to get hundreds and hundreds of people, and so they fill up very quickly. And then we do have a website, moorevilleal.com, and so if you had family members that came into town, or you just wanted your own private tour, there's a phone number there, or anywhere you see a phone number on our website. It'll just be a few of us that will be answering the phone, and it'll be our personal cell phones. That's funny when people call the mayor and we're like, hello, and they're like, I'm trying to. We're like, yeah, that's us. And but you can call and schedule your own private tours. We ask for at least 4 people so that it makes it worth the time. And but yeah, you can bring family members back and do your own tour. And then that normal tour is kind of what you heard about the 3 buildings, and then we loop around town and we talk about some of the historic homes and the people that currently live there and the people that have lived there in the past, and like this diary that we've talked about, and just some of the fun stories about the people.
Can we walk around?
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
And the glass was original in the church.
The windows are, for the most, I would say the majority of the glass in the windows is original. Now, will a rock fly up and crack and
have to replace some, and some of you see are new.
Yeah.
So,
oh, yeah, sorry. I tell you, I'm long-winded and I forget. So, it has always been a hand, and there's only one other church that we know of in South Mississippi that had a similar hand. So in the early 1920s, a storm come through and blew the original hand down. And we had a little guy growing up in town. His nickname was Bubba Richardson, was coming through on his bicycle and saw the hand dangling. He goes home to tell his mom that the hand has fallen off the church and we're not going to know how to get, no one's going to know how to get to heaven anymore. Well, as you imagine, lots going on in the 20s, 30s, 40s. That hand gets taken down, lost forever. ever and ever. And so Bubba lived, he was a lifer. He was born here and he lived here his entire life. And he passed in his early 90s, which was like 2003. And but before he did that, he was determined, that made such an impact on him, he was determined to return the hand to the church, which helped because he was a wood carver. And so he expressed to the town, like, I'm doing this. So the town took a field trip down to Mississippi to the church that had the similar hand. They went up, they did all the measurements. It is a left hand pointing up because he was right-handed, and he drew his arm and hand, and then with the help of a gentleman in Decatur, they carved what we see today up there, and it was replaced in about 2003. And so we're very thankful for Bubba because we all know how we will know the way to heaven. And then the last story, because you reminded me, the Church of Christ. So when it was several years after they broke off that they were able to purchase that land and build that building in 1854. But when they had their first sermon over there, the preacher from the pulpit over here referenced those Christians hatched from eggs laid in the mud seals of hell by the devil himself. So that is some strong language. But so, however, so nothing has changed. We all have disagreements from time to time. But however, everybody must have made up very quickly. We all forgive each other for our sins, and as well as Jesus does. But we were 10 years ago, 12 years ago, we were doing some restoration efforts in the bell tower here. And the contractors, thank goodness, saw this, but they brought to us a piece of wood, and it's got this ornate scrolling handwriting of people's names. And those names were several of the people that broke off and started the Church of Christ. So very quickly they were over here helping their neighbors do construction efforts. So all made up and all is good. But that church stayed an active congregation until the mid-1990s. It is not owned by the town of Mooreville. It is still owned by a board of directors of just Church of Christ members across several Church of Christ churches here in North Alabama. And it is, if you walk around, you'll see there's new siding. It is ongoing a major interior renovation. And as you can imagine, it being a congregation until the mid-90s, several things were done on the inside that, were for economical reasons, heating and cooling, and like a terrible drop ceiling, these big 70 globe lights, and so it's being taken back to, as close as we can get it to what it, would have looked like in the mid, 1850s. So that's so exciting because we have a great relationship with that board, and we can open it and do things when it's not under construction. So, okay.
Well, thank you.
Okay.
So that was longer than promised.
I got a question for you. Was it military land grants in this area from veterans from the 1812 war or the American Revolutionary?
Yeah, I don't know that one. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
If you find out, let me know, and I'll incorporate it in my tour.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.